Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 195 of the I Rock Knits podcast, and I am on the road. I drove down to Winona, Minnesota, which is about 2.5 hours southeast of me, and came to a yarn shop that I have taught at to meet a friend who owns the yarn shop here in Winona. It is called Yarnology, and this is Gaby. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Cori. Thanks.
Yeah,
I'm so glad
I
you're
got
here.
in touch and said, hey, I would like to come down. I used to be here twice a year for a horse show. And so I would come in and talk to them, and I've gotten to know them over the years. They've always been super supportive of me and my little business. And so I love this shop. This would be a great local yarn store if you lived here, or it is a college town.
Yeah,
and
two
so,
colleges.
yeah, so they definitely have younger students and younger people here. But it is a huge store. As you can see, it goes all the way back, and there is a downstairs and a little upstairs. So I will take a little tour and put that in at the end. But today we're just going to chat. We're going to chat with Gaby and so that you can all get to know her, and she'll talk a little bit about maybe some of her favorite knits and what it's like to own a yarn store here in Minnesota, where the yarn community is huge.
Yes.
Yes.
Bigger than the average, I think.
Yeah, I would
Partly
definitely.
because of cold weather in the winter, but
Yes.
partly
Oh,
just
yeah.
because of
We need
creativity
warm
and
things.
Scandinavian
Yeah,
tradition.
yeah,
and
Scandinavian. Yeah, definitely, I would say. So tell me when you learned to knit.
I learned at 7 or 8. My grandmother taught me at the kitchen table using 2 sharpened pencils and some really crappy acrylic yarn.
Pencils.
Yes, so I was
Wow.
getting pencil lead on the yarn as I was knitting. But
That's interesting.
she was a knitter, and she was knitting, and I never saw her knitting a lot, but she was a good knitter. She was very critical of her knitting, and everything had to be perfect. So she was a strict teacher, but I was hooked at with the process, as soon as my pencils started to flow. And then I learned again at maybe 10. And then I learned again at 13 or 14 from someone who was a friend of my mom's, who was really a lovely knitter. And we were staying with them for a week. And then it really, really started to go.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anyone in my immediate life who could correct me, help me with a stuck place. And so I would stop when I hit a wall. And so when I got to college, I went to college in New England, where there were a lot more, at a women's college in New England.
Okay.
So there were a lot more knitters there, and there was better yarn there than in the Midwest.
Oh, okay, sure.
This is late 70s, early 80s.
Yep.
And so there was better wool. It was the first time I saw Icelandic wool. And
We
that
have
kind
a
of stuff.
similar, because when I went to college was when I got back into knitting, when I took a class over a summer.
Okay.
And I knit a small little sweater on straight needles. So I would assume you were still knitting on straight needles then.
Until I did my first Lopi Icelandic.
Yeah,
But
'cause
yes,
there weren't.
I had never seen circulars.
No, circulars were not really, and the ones that did come out were plastic, right?
Yes.
With the plastic cords that had
Yes.
like a lot of memory, right?
Bling.
So yeah, I we're kind of in that same where you're kind of, and I would say that the yarn store was very small and limited, right? I went to school here in Minnesota to college, but yeah, more of a limited supply here, like of what was available to me at the time.
I got my yarn as a young person at Ben Franklin.
Oh, I shopped at Ben Franklin too.
And the choice was some all acrylic thing
Yeah.
that people mostly
Yeah,
used for
for sure.
baby things.
Yeah.
Or Germantown wool, which was,
Yeah.
there is Germantown wool now that I would
Yeah.
absolutely knit with, but it was a little rough.
Yeah. Yes.
You know?
It's
and-
almost like rug yarn.
Yeah.
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 I
So,
remember
anyway.
very well. Yeah. that's
It's
very
probably
true.
the typical story of a Midwestern kiddo
And
learning
so,
to knit.
what were some of the first things you knit? Did you dive right into bigger, to like a sweater? You mentioned Lopi, but or did you mostly do smaller projects when you first started?
My first sweater was an Icelandic color work yoked sweater, only because I was too stupid to know what I didn't know. And the woman at the yarn shop in the college town in Massachusetts rightly said I could do it.
Yes.
I had never knit in the round. I had never joined in the round. and I had never done collar work, but it was 10 and a halfs on, you know, the bigger Lopi, and the sweater turned out beautifully. It was very successful launch, you know, so then I was really interested in knitting more.
For sure.
Whereas if I'd had to piece something together, I think she was wise. It was the only way, I think, to knit a top-down seamless sweater then. Was to do Icelandic. There really weren't patterns. So I think she was brilliant to send me off on that path.
Yeah, and the patterns were in the stores, and they were paper, and they were in plastic sleeves.
Yes.
With a little picture in the center, or they were in a
or you could buy a small booklet.
Right? So that was also, you know, we just didn't have access. There, you know.
No computers, hello.
Right, I know, I know. But I think that for younger knitters who just hop on Ravelry and just get a PDF, we didn't even know the word PDF. We had no idea what that was, right?
Ravelry is such a gift to our community, and I take it for granted so often, and it's magnificent. And how lucky are we?
And that it's free for everyone, right? Like, it's not completely accessible to some people still, I think. But
I know.
But the free part and the data that they pay for, the storage data, is incredible that they haven't.
Well, and the fact that you can look at all the 300 projects that have been done on this and see what variations people took, what little paths they wound down, and whether they were successful or not.
So after college, did you come back to Minnesota?
I did. And to the Twin Cities, where there was a better yarn scene than in small town southeastern Minnesota where I grew up. Definitely.
So. I remember some of the older yarn stores. I didn't move to the cities until I got married into the Twin Cities of Minnesota, Minneapolis and St. Paul. I have people from all over.
We're speaking the lingo.
But I didn't move until after college, and I went to teach for a couple years in southwestern Minnesota, and then I got married and moved to Minneapolis. So I remember some of those older yarn stores that were around for a long time back in the day. Yeah, depth of field.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah. My parents are both artists. My dad's a potter, my mom's a watercolorist. And so that artsy kind of feel was right up their alley, so they took me there.
Yeah. You know? Oh, for definitely. And that part of town was very hip.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I kind of miss that store there.
It was magnificent. Yeah. I didn't imagine such a thing could exist until I walked through those stores and all the light coming in and all the color.
Yeah. And lots of yarn for a smaller, more narrow space. Lots of yarn.
They did well.
Yeah. So what led you into your path of deciding to run a yarn store?
You know, that is a crazy and convoluted question. I lived in this college town because my husband took over a family business in this town. So we're here, we raise our children here. It's a lovely place right on the Mississippi River, very picturesque, lots of opportunities, lots of arts and culture.
Lots of bluffs.
It's so gorgeous. Lots of outdoor recreation, lots of hiking and canoeing and kayaking and rock climbing.
Yeah, but you don't think of Minnesota, Winona, in the sense of the geography as much, you know, because it's not the plains. This is not the plains.
This is not Little House on the Prairie.
No, right? Yeah. No, right? And I drove through that on my way, but that is not what is here. Along the Mississippi River, the rock formations are incredible.
Yes, we're in the driftless region where we didn't get glaciated, and the river has carved out this gorgeous valley with all this other stuff on the edges. But this place had no yarn shop, none, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, really, we have 3 colleges because we have Minnesota Southeast Tech. So between professors and admin and students, there should be a yarn shop here. There's just so much talent here. And yet, retail is hard. And I wanted to do it with someone. I couldn't find anyone who was willing to do it with me for a long time. And when the average price of an item that you sell is $25, you have to sell a lot of them to pay to keep the lights on. There's no big ticket item in a yarn shop.
No, it's same when your average price of your patterns are $7 and $8.
I can't even imagine.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not taking it.
But at least you don't have to do brick and mortar.
No, I don't. Yeah, no, for sure. But I get the whole concept of of how many items you have to sell in order to do that. So what year did the shop open?
We opened in 2010, and it was because I met Kelly, my business partner, for 15 years. She's 15 years younger than I am, and we would never have met. She had a newborn, I had teenagers, and the person who cut our hair said to each of us, there is another person who sits in this chair, and she has the same dream you do. You guys need to talk. And it was back in the day when if you sent someone you weren't connected to a message on Facebook, they would actually get it. And
yes.
And so I said, you don't know me, but our friend Brandy says we need to meet and talk about opening a yarn shop. And she made arrangements for someone to take care of her baby. And for an hour, her sister was taking care of her child. And she came to my home and we talked for 4 hours. She kept calling her sister saying, is it okay if I stay a little longer? Is it okay if I stay a little longer? Because we had so many of the same ideas of how a yarn shop should feel.
Yeah.
And that was miraculous to me.
Yeah.
I had not ever met anybody who thought the same way I did about how you should feel when you walk in. And that was really important to both of us.
Yeah. And so what was the process? I know you were in a different building when you first opened. So what was the process to get it open for the two of you? Did you make an LLC together, or did you just kind of both throw some money in a pot?
One of us is the money person and one of us is the more knowledgeable about yarn person. So we brought different assets to the table, I think. So that made it simpler for the LLC, just one of us.
Yeah.
And yet the partnership was real.
Yes.
And we rented, we haggled to find a place. We knew we had to be downtown. We love downtown Winona. It's beautiful. It's a destination. It's picturesque. There are other things to do while you're here. But finding the right place that we could afford downtown was a big deal.
Yeah.
It took a while. We also did personality testing and strengths finders because we weren't sisters or best friends. We were almost strangers to one another. We were strangers with the same dream, and we wanted to become not strangers. And every week we sent each other an email that said, these are things no one knows about me, but that you should probably know. And I still have those in a folder. They were so special to me and so precious that someone would share this intimate stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's really
cool.
neat. Because I don't think that you get to know a friend for a long time. You can be friends with someone for quite a while if you don't really get into the nitty-gritty, which a lot of times with friends you don't. It's a shared lived experience over a period of time, but you can be a friend with someone for 4 years and find out something new about them, right?
Absolutely.
And be like, well, gosh,
unless you're in some sort of a pressure cooker situation, you don't see how they respond to that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And so we really tried to do that. And then we divided up all the tasks that we could imagine of running a yarn shop. And we talked to yarn shop owners that were far enough away that we weren't competing with them. And we cut out little slips of paper and put them in the pile of the person who would do them best to kind of create job descriptions.
Oh, this is great.
Instead of both of us thinking that we would be the person who did this.
Yeah.
Because there's so much back end in a retail business. And who does the back end? Everybody wants to work with the customers. But for instance, Kelly would hate sitting here talking to you, even though she loves you, because being on camera is, even in a still photograph, is a little bit of torture for her.
I have several yarn store owners in the Twin Cities who will not meet with me. They just are
really painful.
And and they just can't. They're just not. And I continue to ask because I'm like, we just literally talk to each other, and the iPad is sitting over there, but. I get it.
It's emotionally really stressful for them, and they have enough stress in their lives.
Yeah.
And Kelly is that way, and I will talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And so we found out more about each other when we did that. Really? That would be hard for you? Well, I will have no problem with that.
Yes.
And then there was a pile of things we both would hate to do, and we had to figure that out too.
Yeah. So when you opened, were you the only two that were going to work the store? Or because she had a small child, what was it on you to do?
No, it was the two of us. We worked all the hours together.
Okay.
And it was equal square footage to this, but not as easy to manage. This is a straight shot, long bowling alley of a store from front to back in the block. And we still don't ever let one person run the shop just because it has two entrances. But we tried to always be two of us, except for when one person was going to the bank or whatever.
Yeah.
Because we have different areas of expertise.
Yeah.
It came to ordering, and I had always worked with worsted or bulky or super bulky, and Kelly had worked with DK and fingering and sport. And so when we were ordering, I would have been a stupid yarn shop owner by myself. But I had worked and managed retail before, and Kelly had been in a yarn shop as a part-time weekend person while she was actually being a very busy teacher during the week. But she loved the idea of it. And so we had very different skill sets as far as retail goes too.
Yeah, that's neat though, that you kind of meshed. And the fact that you're still in business 15 years later when you really did start out as strangers.
Yeah.
That's, impressive. Because I'm assuming that you've had to work through some crises.
Sure. Well,
like
COVID-19, for instance. That kind of, we are closed mandatorily. We are open, but only 2 people at a time can come in, that kind of stuff. It was just a slow learning as you go kind of, process. Anyway. Yeah. So, you just finished a big sweater challenge. So I want people to know what that is, so that if they want to participate, they could in the future and know what that's all about. It's one of my favorite events that we do annually.
And it's very popular.
It is. We had 85 participants this year, and they are from all over the country. You do not need to be in Minnesota or southeastern Minnesota to do this. But we cast on, you're allowed to cast on at 12:01 on January 1st to start off the new year, or anytime thereafter. And then we wrap it up on the last day-ish of February, depending on how that day falls. This year it fell on a Saturday, which was really cool. And we have a little soiree for people who can come. But people send us photos of what they finished. Some people finish half a sweater. Some people finish 3 sweaters. This year, Minnesotans were interrupted by the knitting of red hats to a huge extent. And so a lot of us weren't quite done or finished at 3 o'clock in the morning on the last day, kind of a thing. It was that kind of a year, and that's fine. It's a very open-handed, open-hearted event that just encourages the knitting of sweaters. Your first sweater, your 100th sweater. I'm kind of a serial sweater knitter, and so I always looked for something that is outside the realms of what I've done before. And
that's always my drug of choice, is something that is going to give me something new, something different, a different kind of yarn, or just maybe a teaching moment, something that's going on.
Of shaping.
Something. So that I can maybe expand my skills a little bit into something that maybe I haven't done a lot of. Yeah, for sure. And I think I saw online the pictures of the people, and you can go over to Instagram. You guys have a Facebook too group? Yeah. So, and follow them and kind of be reminded of when those things are going to come up and happen again, for sure.
But and if you're distant, the Ravelry group is very lively. The chit chat about what are you liking about this pattern? Have you knit this designer before? That kind of stuff.
Do people come in and knit as a group during that time? Like, do you have a set, like Thursday nights we knit sweaters?
We're open later on Thursday, and we encourage people to come in for a little moment of assistance or just some camaraderie. Thursdays. Nothing official, and they were welcome anytime. But
so you didn't do like a Zoom where people could get on?
We have in some years, especially years when people weren't gathering very well. But we didn't this year. It's been poorly attended the last couple of years. We did it on Saturdays, and Saturdays are crazily busy for people.
I'm finding that too, that there's some Zoom fatigue out there. People are just like, I don't want to
But we just encourage people to get together with someone they enjoy to knit on their sweater and
Yeah,
maybe get
yeah,
that person
for sure.
to knit a sweater too, or a vest or a poncho or whatever,
Yeah.
a dog sweater,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
is your thing.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to pump you up a little bit. And one of the reasons that I wanted to come and talk to you is because I love Gaby's newsletter. And she knows this because I write her and tell her, this was awesome. You write a great newsletter.
Thank you.
Your quote at the beginning of your newsletter, and how often do they come out?
Typically once a week. Sometimes I skip a week, but yeah.
So you just want to get on their newsletter list. She does a quote and then she tells a little story. And if you've watched the podcast at all, you know that I do Cori stories on the podcast. I'm a huge storyteller. I love understanding stories and reading people's stories, and you do a really good job. And I know how much work that is.
Thanks.
To write a good newsletter because I don't like writing and I was a high school teacher who thought she wanted to be a writer, and it's just a lot to be succinct and pare things down, but also be creative. And I think you put all that together really well.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. I love writing the newsletter and hate writing the newsletter. Sometimes it just flows out,
right?
Like
it's always
the deadline piece.
I have to do it.
It's like I love to cook, but making dinner every night sometimes drives me bonkers.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the way it is with the newsletter. But some consistency is important to people who like to read it or who want to know what's going on. So I try to have, unless I'm traveling or not feeling well, I try to do it every week. And some weeks it just flows out of my heart. There's just a story to tell, a thing to say. I can hardly stop the words from coming out, and I bet you know this feeling. And some weeks it's like dragging a rock up a hill.
I need to find a quote.
And I'm quite sure people can tell that those are the weeks that
I don't
having.
know. I just really, they're not long. It's not like it goes on for pages. I just never delete it. I always leave it until I can read it, right? And I mean that. I wouldn't say it otherwise, because I subscribe to everyone's newsletter, right? Everybody, because I want to know what's going on where, so that if I'm going to teach or design, I want to know it. And there are hundreds a week that I can't open and read, because you can't open and read them all,
right?
Right. And I said the same thing to Teresa of Get Ben's Farm. She writes stories from the sheep's point of view, the lamb's point of view.
Brilliant.
Often the second half of her newsletter, so you do have to scroll down a little bit, but the lamb or the sheep will tell you what's going on the farm. And it's darling. There are just certain people that I think have a gift for writing a nice newsletter, and it's not just, hey, this is what we have on sale this week. Right? Which is great too. I want to know where the sales are. We all want to know where the sales are.
But not only that.
Well, I think that's all some people have in them, right?
Yeah.
You know from running a store, and I know from that sometimes all I have to give is, this is the new pattern I have out, right? And I want to tell you some other things. So I have started adding, because I love to cook too, a recipe at the bottom, my favorite book of the week, because I always am reading and cooking and baking, and so I added that at the bottom, just because I want there to be something for them to scroll down for, not just like, this is another pattern that Cori just put out, so I'm going to close it, right? Let me see what book she's recommending or whatever. And I like clicking on those links in some people's, right?
Especially recommendations for things to eat, cook, or read.
Yes, yeah. And so that's, I just made honey lime enchiladas, new recipe, and I served them to my husband for the first time. Not that I haven't made an enchilada before, but this had like a cream and enchilada sauce over them. It was so good. The concoction that you pour over the shredded chicken was so good, and I said to Ross, this is a newsletter recipe.
It's worthy.
Right? Like, I gotta circle that, because I gotta do a newsletter this weekend, and this is a newsletter recipe.
I love that that's a bar that it reached.
Yes.
Well, my husband's a beekeeper, so anything with honey in it, I'm always looking for a great recipe.
This was really
especially savory things,
flavorful. So sign up for her newsletter. Let's talk a little bit about some of the yarns you have in the shop. What are some of your favorites, or what are some of your best sellers, or even what are some things that you guys have that maybe some other people don't have? And feel free to go grab something or
okay.
just tell people or show whatever, what you have.
Our best sellers are classics, Berroco and Malabrigo.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't touch them. They're amazing. And Berroco makes so many yarns, but their basics are such good entry-level yarns. Call them the house yarns, like you have a house
absolutely.
wine. And we teach people to knit on ultra wool chunky. You just can't go wrong with them.
What do they make for a first beginning knitting project? Just a swatch? Or a scarf or a little square?
We do a one-shot deal because we have a hard time getting people to come back in for the second class, part of the class. So
I get that.
They do a rectangle,
okay,
which could be continued and go into a scarf or a cowl and seamed up to be a cowl.
Okay.
And then they come back in and pick what they want to do.
People ask me all the time. I just had this conversation last week with another person, and I asked the same question, right? I was just like, what do you teach? How do you teach it? Because people who are knitters want to know how to teach a friend or a book club or their neighbors or whatever. And so I put together a thing that says how I teach beginning knitting. I put it out on YouTube, like, this is what I do. It won't work for everybody, but this is what has been working for me. But people want to know what.
We would love to teach knitting in the round, and we just don't have time. But then we teach other classes that get to that.
Yeah.
But
so are they just doing garter stitch and just the knit, or do they learn the purl?
They learn the purl as well.
And casting on?
We don't start them with
I
casting
don't
on.
I don't
the
either. I'm
cast
so
on.
good to hear that I cast them on. I'm just like,
it's the last thing you should learn. Because then they get that mixed up with the knit stitch
and the tensioning and
tricky.
getting them on and then so I agree, I cast on for them.
So they learn knitting, they learn purling, and a combination of knitting and purling, how to switch the yarn between knitting and purling, and then they learn binding off, and then they learn casting on. If they're ready. If they're still tongue sticking out knitting, just keep going. I'm going to tell this other person how to purl. But, whatever is their pace.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's good to know. Okay, other yarns. Malabrigo. Everybody's,
It's just so amazing.
And there's not other yarn like it. There's not other saturated yarn. I always take my beginners, if they're willing, to a yarn shop for their first shopping experience, because I think it can be very overwhelming if they've only been in big box stores.
Yes, and very
different.
And
they often, the radar to Malabrigo is like ding, 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 ding. Just shocking.
It's eye candy.
I know. And they're like, oh, what is this? And I
so
said,
much,
I'm
sorry.
No.
So much yarn that draws new knitters is not good for them.
Right.
But Malabrigo is good for them.
Yes.
Like something that's super soft and has silk and alpaca in it, they should not be knitting with. Stop that. Slap their hands.
Or black.
If they're
sometimes
drawn
they're like,
to the
well,
beauty.
I just want to make a black.
Yeah. Your third project, Sweet Pea. Yeah. If they're drawn to the beauty of Malabrigo, the price point isn't bad. The colors are rich and amazing, and they will have success. I want them to win. I want them to have a great time with their first hat, their first scarf. That's the goal. And so I want to steer them away from a linen tencel blend, Yeah.
It's shocking to me because whenever I take them, I take them to I've gone to several different stores depending on where I'm teaching, right? And I take them in, and it is just like a beacon.
Yes.
in the night. They just were like, oh,
that's a great way to describe it,
right?
Yeah.
It's just so saturated.
Yeah.
So on the shelf, not that the other yarns aren't pretty, but people just are really drawn.
Yeah. We carry Noro, which a lot of shops don't carry, just because the color is amazing. I have a sweater to show that I made last winter to cheer myself up. After the sweater challenge, I needed to make another sweater, and I made it out of Noro Saiun. I did the favorite flannel, so it has the stripes of the Noro, but also a little texture every fourth row. You do a knit one, purl one, And so it's not a lot of texture, but it just kept me going to see what color was going to be next. And
I love stripes, and everybody knows I love stripes. Top down raglan.
yeah,
And
nothing. We carry Plummer Yarn Company, which is local. The dyer is in the city limits of Winona. She's amazing. This is actually made with her silk mohair blend, a double strand. And this, if you look closely, you'll see this is the Carbeth, but totally bastardized. I mean, totally made elegant because it's a double strand of mohair silk.
that's a favorite pattern of yours and in the store.
The whole shop. Someone said we have this thing once a month called Maker's Morning, where we, before the shop opens on a Saturday, you come in and work and talk and catch up on what's new. And someone said, I think Carbeth is coming back. And we're like, did it ever go away? Because we keep knitting in different.
Yes,
I saw one on Ravelry the other day, and the person was from another country. You had to do Google Translate to read their notes, and I can't remember where. But the ribbing of the sleeve, they carried the 2x2 ribbing all the way up into here.
Oh, cool.
Which made it look like something Smartwool would design. I mean, it was just really, really attractive and really sporty looking, really different.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I have to go look at
Kate
that.
Davies would be proud of
Yeah.
all the ways people do Carbeth.
Yeah, no, it's a great sweater. And for quickness of knitting in that chunkier weight yarn, that is really nice. Not everybody can wear chunky, especially like in warmer climates. They can't always wear chunky, but
Right.
here you're telling us you can change the gauge.
This
right?
is the gauge,
You have
but
a bigger
it's so
needle
thin.
and,
Yeah.
thin yarn.
And because it's not just silk, it's silk mohair, it holds itself together and doesn't slump. But you
So
can-
do you think you could do it with a 2 strands of fingering in any type of thing? Could you?
I really do. Maybe not super wash.
Yeah, right.
Something that has a little bit of oomph to
Yeah.
it, but yes.
Yeah.
Something from Isager. We love Isager.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
and you could
yes.
blend 2 things, 1 furry, 1 knot,
Yeah.
or 2 knot if you don't like the loftiness of mohair or alpaca
Yeah.
or yak. They have some gorgeous yarns
Oh,
at
yeah,
Isager.
yeah.
That's another favorite of ours. We of course adore Blue Sky and do a ton with that. We have Feederbrook Farms, which is really a favorite.
Yes.
And Harrisville. You won't know this by this sweater, but I'm a person who loves to feel the characteristics of the wool and to sense that it came recently off of a sheep, you know,
Yes.
a beautiful sheep raised somewhere happily,
Yes.
and got a haircut, and now I get to knit. And so Harrisville does that so well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can smell the lanolin when you open the boxes sometimes. And we have several of their yarns. I did, for the sweater challenge, I did this out of Highland, which is their worsted. And it's a woolen spun, but it blooms beautifully like woolen spuns do when you block it. And the pattern is the Zakkuri cardigan. It's a Japanese designer.
Oh.
And it's very origami-like. It's like, look how wide and like dolman sleevey
Yep.
it is, but you put it on someone little and it looks amazing.
Yeah,
It just goes
yeah.
whoosh. But
Well,
I have a friend who's 6 feet tall and, you know, kind of a bigger boned person, and she made the same cardigan. Amazing on her.
And did she also kind of make it that oversized?
This is
on
the
her?
way it is.
Okay, yeah,
This
yeah.
is like the smallest size. It's
Do
really
you
a
know
fun
how-
one.
How you?
Zakkuri
Oh.
is
I
the
didn't
pattern.
even come close. I'm glad I looked that up.
And forgive me for I'm terrible at designer names, and the
No.
designers are so important to me. But I would follow this designer down a dark alley. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
she does a beautiful job.
Yeah.
This has like 4 or 5 inches of ribbing, but it's kind of gentle ribbing, 3x1. It's just really architectural looking, which I love in a
Yeah.
pattern.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
I think I'm going to wear the heck out of it. Otherwise, we have Wandering Flock, which is hard to find. Cotton Lino and Fluff, and we have a new one coming in that isn't anywhere yet, which is going to be fun. We do Big Bad Wool, which is a beautiful yarn that
Oh,
you don't see very
she's
often. From the South, I want to say Alabama.
Okay.
Donna, we love her personally, and she does her own patterns in some cases,
yeah.
and we really love her designs. So that's one you won't find just anywhere. We do Jody Long.
Yep.
is a favorite. Some of his yarns are just unique on the planet, and we really enjoy him.
Do you find that you and Kelly like to knit the same things or different things?
Often different things.
Okay, yeah, which is nice, right?
Yes.
Because then you've got two personalities in the store.
Yes.
And not just the
well,
same.
and there are only 4 of us on the team. I mean, pre-COVID, we were up to a bloated kind of 10. A lot of part-timers who only worked a couple times a month, which isn't great for a shop.
Yeah.
We're down to 4 people on staff. And everyone knows the stuff in the shop. And everyone is a knitter. And 2 of us are also crocheters. So just a lot of stuff is being made, and we're all so different.
Okay, yeah, I was going to
So
say,
different.
do the other 2 people lean more towards your style or more toward Kelly's style?
Often I'll make something, and Susan Scanlon, who's on staff, will make the same thing, but we have a totally different way of making it. Or Susan and Elle both made the Lakes pullover from Ozetta, and totally different. Yeah. Elle made it in this unspun Mancholopi from the Spanish company. Do you know this company?
Modulopi?
It looks like a wheel of cheese, Manchego cheese.
Yep.
Wool Dreamers in Spain. And it is completely unspun. It is just a double.
I saw it on the shelf, but that's not what I thought it was.
It's a double strand of air, basically. And so it's a little fragile until you knit it. And then it is the lightest, coziest, strongest. This is community cozy. And feel.
Hold up the
cake.
Yeah, so you guys can see.
Some people knit a single strand. It's intentionally caked as a double strand because you need the 2 strands, in my mind, to keep it strong.
Yeah.
But once you knit it, this whole sweater probably weighs, I don't know, ounces.
Yeah.
But it is one of my coziest sweaters. It's a little pilly because it's been cold, and I just throw it on when I get home.
So it's 250 yards to 100 grams. So the 2 strands runs about a DK. Or does it knit up more as a worsted?
Because it's so airy.
Yeah. I would think 2 strands would be, because it's just a completely different structure. I took a class from Meg Swanson back in the day on how to knit with this yarn and to not pull it apart and how to,
And you have to do a little spit splicing along the way. If someone startles you and you jump, the phone rings and you jerk to look, you will break it, but it's easily put back together and off you go.
Yeah. And she did talk a little bit about giving a little twist as you knit it, being able to just twist it together if it feels like it's fragile in a spot or getting in a spot where you have pulled it, to just kind of
great advice.
Like almost like you're spinning it, but you just, just twist a little before you get to it. That's about all I remember because I was overwhelmed. She had knit this gorgeous sweater and passed it around the room, and it had a big intarsia something in the middle of it, just one thing, but it weighed nothing. It just weighed absolutely nothing. Just really interesting yarn.
And as I get older, having something heavy on my shoulders is not appealing. And so this is really cozy without being really heavy.
Maybe a favorite thing you ever knit? Magnum opus, something that a challenge or something that you...
I think the sweater I'm most proud of is really simple, maybe. It's a sweater. I've been married to my husband for 38 years. And I had never, this was a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I had never knit the man a sweater. He's a freeze baby. He wears a sweater every day in the winter, every day to work. And finally he said,
how did that happen?
I don't know. Well, it comes from the legend. It comes from the curse of the boyfriend sweater. And I had a couple of boyfriends where I knit them a big, lovely, hunky sweater. And, 3 months later, that was the end.
Yeah.
And I think part of the curse is that it's overwhelming to get such a gift from someone you're just dating. That, an Icelandic colorwork sweater that they'll have for 50 years is a lot to hand someone for Valentine's Day or their birthday or whatever. And then they feel like the relationship's off kilter. And, you start this slow roll of, I don't know. And so, but when you've been married at at the time, I think it was well over 30 years. I told my husband about the curse, that the relationship will fail if you knit them a sweater. And he said, honey, I think you can trust me to stick around. And so I knit him. And also he had a funny tradition in the first years of the shop being open. He didn't know anything about yarn. So the only attribute he could think of was the color of the yarn. And he would call at the end of the day to see what we needed at the grocery store or whatever. And he would, whoever picked up the phone, he would say, hey, I wonder if you have any red yarn. And we were all trained to say, I'm sorry, sir, we just sold the last of the red yarn, which is now true. We have no red yarn because of protest hats. Yeah. But so I knew the sweater had to be red. And it had to be amazing for him. And so I knit a sweater called the Adirondack, and he wears it at least once a week.
Oh,
and
that's
it's in
lovely.
That gorgeous
What a
red
nice...
of wool stock,
yep.
And it fits him to a T.
That's a really nice story. Absolutely.
So that's my favorite sweater, even though it wasn't particularly complex.
Any other favorites? Favorite knits? Favorite patterns? Something you tell people in the shop? When they're saying, I don't know what I want to knit next.
I knit the Jaunty, which is a
Yes,
triangle.
yep.
I use it as a scarf, but I think it's a shawl technically, but a shallow triangle. It is the coziest darn thing. Mine is a beautiful, soft, sort of periwinkly blue. But I have it
in the store.
I have the sample. The sample we have in the store is in this beautiful.
Oh yes.
Kind of Merlot color. It's really called Merlot. And I just throw it on with my winter coat. And then so often I was at a wedding in January and it was cold and I just put it on with my dress because I could wear it.
Yeah.
But it's made with fluff, which is of course amazing.
Yeah,
and,
that was kind of a viral scarf in the last few months.
Yeah.
Where everybody's,
midwinter.
And a lot of spinners spinning yarn for it right now.
Neat.
A couple of the podcasters, the Table 10 girls, were having a spin along to knit up the Jaunty because the color changing yarn can do that.
Yeah.
But yes,
and
this is that blown yarn. She said fluff, but it is Wandering Flock fluff that they have in the store. It took 4 skeins. It's fisherman's rib.
Half fisherman's.
Half fisherman's rib.
So it's one of those melodic, systematic.
Easy to knit, but very long and fairly shallow.
But I think this yarn would be amazing for the Sophie hood. I mean, there are so many things that you put next to your neck, next to your face, where you want something exquisite.
I'm gonna grab a skein of it, and of course I'm gonna grab this. Just glorious. My 2 favorites. Purple and raspberry.
Cori's gonna do a striped version in these 2 colors.
Yeah. So I probably even wouldn't put these together, but it's that blown core.
And you might know a dyer who does a similar base to this.
So this is my I Feel Pretty sweater that I use Lavender Loon's flocculent base. And it is that same kind of DK to worsted yarn that I have talked about on the podcast. So people who have watched will know that I was holding up cakes because I did, one of the iterations was in a lavender, and then I did an iteration in that kind of coral color. So they do have this yarn in stock here. Where is Brooklyn Wandering Flock? I get mixed up on where all the yarns come from.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure.
And you just assume that someone who's doing some exquisite fiber is out in where the fiber comes from, not in Brooklyn.
I just get, I often go, I know her and I follow her, but I don't know where they live. I don't know what, Well, because people are dying everywhere now.
Yes.
Like lots of independent dyers dying everywhere.
Yeah, they're following their passions, which is
so
fabulous. We
are in the southeast corner of Minnesota. So how far are we from Wisconsin and Iowa for people geographically?
I can see Wisconsin from my kitchen window. It's a mile to Wisconsin. We're right on the west bank of the Mississippi, and Wisconsin's on the east bank.
Yep.
And we're about 45 minutes from the Iowa border.
Yeah.
La Crosse is half an hour away,
Yeah.
40 minutes away, depending on where you're going. So
How
we're right
far
here.
out is I-90?
It is
Right?
probably 4 miles to I-90.
Okay, yeah,
And that's
so-
a way you could have come.
Right, but I didn't.
Right.
When we came from the horse barn, we came that way.
Yes,
I came
because it's
I
right
came
by
through
the interstate.
the-
Yeah.
down the other side, but through Lake City and
So we're
Red
less
Wing.
than an hour from Rochester.
Yeah.
And
just for people to know that, like, if you're taking a cross-country trip on I-90, or if you're coming north or south, you're really not far off from any
Right.
of those places. So if you
Right.
want
It's
to
an
come into
easy
the store,
jaunt into
to stop
downtown.
into the store. And I have told this a few times, but on Ravelry there is a trip planner on the yarn page. And you can go to the trip planner and put in where you live and your destination, and it will tell you all the yarn stores along the way. So you can find every yarn store, and you can tell it how far off the road you're willing to go. So if you're gonna go across, I mean, maybe somebody's traveling on I-90 all the way to Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah.
And then you can just say, hey, how far off? I'm willing to go 10 miles off the road. We're gonna get lunch or gas or whatever anyway, and then you can find Yarnology here in Winona.
What a great suggestion.
Did you miss anything?
No.
Did I miss anything?
No.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I want to thank Gaby for taking the time to talk to me today. It was just a joy to be back in their shop. I absolutely love this shop. It is welcoming and open and very well organized, huge selection of yarns, and has a great owner. With a great business partner who's a little bit shy. So, well, not shy, a little bit just.
She doesn't need to be the center of attention. That's not a
Right,
need she has.
right.
Whereas I love being the center of attention.
Yeah. So, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye. Nice job.
Oh, thank you. You make it easy.
Well, I am kind of a talker.
Well, I knit the Jaunty, which is a
yes,
triangle.
yes, yep.
I use it as a scarf, but I think it's a
Yep,
shawl
yep,
technically,
yep.
but a shallow triangle. It is the coziest darn thing. Mine is a beautiful, soft, sort of periwinkly blue. But I have
in the store?
I have the sample. The sample we have in the store is in this beautiful
Oh, yes.
kind of Merlot color. It's really called Merlot. And I just throw it on with my winter coat. And then so often I was at a wedding in January and it was cold and I just put it on with my dress because I could
Yep.
wear it.
Yep.
But it's made with fluff, which is of course amazing.
Yeah,
And,
that was kind of a viral scarf in the last few months.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
everybody's
midwinter.
and a lot of spinners
Oh.
spinning yarn for it right now.
Half
This is that
fisherman's
blown yarn. She said fluff, but
Any.
it is wandering flock fluff that they have in the store. It took 4 skeins. It's fisherman's rib,
Half fisherman.
half fisherman's rib.
So it's one of those melodic,
Yeah,
systematic.
easy to knit, but very long and fairly shallow.
But I think this yarn would be amazing for the Sophie hood. I mean, there are so many things that you put next to your neck, next to your face, where you want something
It's
exquisite.
that blown core.
And you might know a dyer who does a similar
Yes,
base to this.
so this is my I Feel Pretty sweater that I use Lavender Loon's flocculent base. And it is that same kind of DK to worsted yarn that I have talked about on the podcast. So people who have watched will know that I was holding up cakes because I did, one of the iterations was in a lavender and then I did an iteration in that kind of coral color. So they do have this yarn.
just
So
fabulous.
we are in the southeast corner of Minnesota. So how far are we from Wisconsin and Iowa for people
I can see
geographically?
Wisconsin from my kitchen window. It's a mile to Wisconsin. We're right on the west bank of the Mississippi and Wisconsin's on the
Other
east
side,
bank.
yep.
And we're about 45 minutes from the Iowa border.
Yeah.
La Crosse is half an hour away,
Yeah.
40 minutes away, depending on where you're going. So
How
we're right
far
here.
out is I-90?
It is
right?
probably 4 miles to I-90.
Okay, yeah.
And that's
so,
a way you could have come.
right, but I didn't.
Right.
When we came from the horse barn, we came that way.
Yes,
I came
because it's
I
right
came
by
through
the interstate,
down the other side, but through Lake City and
So we're
Red
less
Wing.
than an hour from Rochester.
Yeah.
And
just for people to know that, like, if you're taking a cross-country trip on I-90, or if you're coming north or south, you're really not far off from any of
Right.
those places. So
Right.
if you want
It's
to
an
come into
easy
the store,
jaunt into
to stop
downtown.
into the store. And I have told this a few times, but on Ravelry there is a trip planner on the yarn page. And you can go to the trip planner and put in where you live and your destination, and it will tell you all the yarn stores along the way. So you can find every yarn store, and you can tell it how far off the road you're willing to go. So if you're gonna go across, I mean, maybe somebody's traveling on I-90 all the way to Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah.
And then you can just say, hey, how far off? I'm willing to go 10 miles off the road. We're gonna get lunch or gas or whatever anyway, and then you can find Yarnology here in Winona.
What a great suggestion.
Did you miss anything?
No.
Did I miss anything?
No.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I want to thank Gaby for taking the time to talk to me today. It was just a joy to be back in their shop. I absolutely love this shop. It is welcoming and open and very well organized, huge selection of yarns, and has a great owner. With a great business partner. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye.